Rest your mind, dear friend. I'm Tilly Butterbloom, and tonight, a lantern in the woods whispered my name. This is the story of the Whispering Lantern. The night had settled over Butterbloom Cottage in its usual comforting way. Soft, warm, and smelling faintly of mint and wood smoke. But even before Tilly Butterbloom noticed anything unusual, she felt it. A little tug, a little prickle, a little something out of place. Tilly stood at her kitchen counter, pouring hot water into her favorite teacup, while Pip, her enchanted teapot, puffed steam in a way that suggested he was judging her for brewing tea at this hour. "Oh, hush," Tilly said, giving him a fond tap. "Some of us unwind with chamomile. Some of us whistle dramatically for attention." Pip whistled again, louder this time. Tilly raised an eyebrow. "See? Dramatic." She lifted her cup, took a slow sip, and let her gaze drift towards the window. The garden lanterns glowed in their usual neat row along the stone path. Except one. The third lantern from the left flickered. Not a normal flicker, a nervous flicker. Tilly set her cup down. "Well, that's not right." Pip gave a tiny worried chirp. "Oh, don't fuss. It's probably just a moth with ambition." But even as she said it, the lantern's glow wavered again and then lifted. Just an inch. Just enough to make Tilly straighten. Lanterns did not lift. Not unless someone enchanted them. And Tilly certainly hadn't. She grabbed her cloak, nudged the door open, and stepped into the cool night air. The garden smelled of mint and damp earth, and the lanterns cast warm pools of light across the path. All except the trembling one. It hovered uncertainly, as though trying to decide whether to flee or faint. Tilly approached slowly. "All right, sweetheart, what's troubling you?" The lantern flickered once, twice, then whispered, barely audible, "Lost." Tilly blinked. "Lost what?" The lantern bobbed weakly, drifting a few inches towards the whispering woods. Pip whistled a warning. "Oh, hush," Tilly murmured. "If the woods wanted to eat me, they'd have done it years ago." She stepped closer to the lantern, lowering her voice. "Show me." The lantern brightened, relieved, almost then drifted towards the tree. Tilly followed, her cloak brushing the herbs as she passed. Behind her, Butterbloom Cottage glowed warm and safe. Ahead, the woods waited, and somewhere inside them, something was missing. Something the lantern wanted back. Something that didn't want to be found. The whispering woods always felt alive, but tonight they felt attentive, as though the trees were leaning in just a little closer than usual. Tilly stepped beneath the branches, Pip tucked into the crook of her arm. The lantern drifted ahead, its glow dimming and brightening in uneven pulses. "Steady now," Tilly murmured. "We'll find it." "Lost," the lantern whispered again, softer this time. Tilly frowned thoughtfully. "Lost what, though? A piece of yourself? A charm? A memory?" Pip whistled a suggestion. "No, Pip, I don't think it's a sock." They followed the lantern deeper. The forest lanterns, the ones permanently hung along the path, flickered as she walked past, as though greeting her, but their glow felt thinner tonight, like something had brushed through the woods and taken a bit of their warmth with it. Tilly noticed it too. A faint chill, a subtle emptiness, magic missing from the air. "Something's been here," she murmured. Pip hummed uneasily. The wandering lantern drifted toward a narrow clearing, its glow weakening with each step. "Lost. Peace." Tilly stopped. "A piece," she repeated. "A piece of what?" The lantern flickered violently, then dimmed into a trembling ember. "Oh dear," Tilly whispered. "You're running out of whatever is keeping you going." She knelt beside it, reaching into her cloak for a small pouch of comfort magic. She sprinkled a pinch into the air, and particles rose like warm fireflies settling around the lantern. Its glow steadied. Not bright, but stable. "There we are," Tilly said softly. "Now show me." The lantern drifted forward again, more certain now. And then Tilly saw it. A faint shimmer on the ground, like a scrap of light that had fallen and forgotten how to shine. Tilly approached slowly. The fragment hung just above the earth, a small trembling mote of golden light, pulsing weakly like a heartbeat fading in and out. Pip let out a startled whistle. "Oh," Tilly breathed. "You poor thing." She recognized it at once. A spell fragment, a piece of an enchantment that had broken away from its source. Lanterns in the whispering wood were old magic, older than the cottage, older than the village, older than Tilly herself. They were bound by spells that kept the paths lit, the woods safe, and the forest spirits calm. If our fragment had broken loose, something disturbed the enchantment. Something subtle, something quiet, but something real. Tilly knelt beside the fragment. "You belong to this lantern, don't you?" The lantern flickered in confirmation. "Lost. Peace." Tilly nodded. "Well, let's put you back where you belong." Tilly nodded. But as she reached out, the fragment drifted away, not fleeing, but resisting, as though it wasn't sure, as though it remembered something, as though it had seen something. Tilly softened her voice. "It's all right. You're safe now." The fragment pulsed weakly. "Taken." Tilly froze. "Taken," she repeated. "Someone took you?" The fragment dimmed, then brightened. Once, twice, a yes. Tilly's eyes narrowed, not in anger, but in curiosity. "Well then," she murmured, "that changes things." Tilly stood and scanned the clearing more carefully now. The moss was disturbed in a narrow trail, as though someone had walked through recently. Not a large someone, small feet, lighter steps. A child? A creature? A spirit. She crouched, brushing her fingers along the moss. Warm, still holding the imprint of magic. Pip whistled softly. "Yes," Tilly murmured. "Whoever took the fragment wasn't trying to break anything. They needed it. But why?" She followed the faint trail a few steps, stopping where the moss gave way to soft earth. There, a half buried beneath a fallen leaf, she found something small and metallic, a clasp. shaped like a crescent moon. Tilly lifted it, turning it over in her hand. This didn't come from any lantern I know. Pip hummed thoughtfully. No, not from the cottage either. She slipped the clasp into her pocket. We'll hold on to this. The lantern drifted closer, its glow steady now that the fragment had been found. But Tilly wasn't ready to return home. Not yet. Someone out here knows how to break old spells, she murmured. And that's not something I can ignore. The lantern flickered in agreement. Pip whistled nervously. Oh, hush, Tilly said gently. We'll be careful. As they made their way back towards the path, Tilly noticed something she hadn't before. The forest lanterns, those ancient enchanted lights that lined the deeper paths, were dimmer than usual. Not dangerously so, but noticeably. Like they were tired, or missing something, or waiting. Tilly paused beneath one, reaching up to touch the metal frame. It was cool, too cool for a lantern that had been burning all night. Something's draining them, she murmured. Pip whistled a worried note. Yes, I know, but we'll figure it out. The wandering lantern bobbed beside her, its glow warm and steady now that the fragment had been returned. Tilly gave it a gentle pat. You did well. The lantern hummed proudly. Let's get you home. The walk felt back different. The forest lanterns glowed warmer now, steadier, as though relieved. The woods felt less tense, less hollow. Whatever had disturbed the magic was still out there, but the immediate wrongness had been smoothed. Butterbloom Cottage came into view, golden and welcoming. Pip hummed sleepily. Tilly smiled. Yes, yes. Tea and bed for both of us. She paused at the garden path, turning to the wandering lantern. Rest well, she said softly. The lantern flickered in thanks and drifted back to its hook, settling into place with a warm, steady glow. Whole again. Tilly stepped inside the cottage, closing the door behind her. The fire crackled softly. The herbs swayed gently. Everything felt right. But as she hung her cloak, she murmured, Someone out there knows how to break a spell. Pip whistled uneasily. Tilly nodded. We'll look into it in the morning. She poured herself the last of her tea, took a slow sip, and let the warmth settle into her chest. A gentle mystery had begun, and Tilly Butterbloom was very good at gentle mystery. Morning arrived at Butterbloom Cottage in its usual gentle fashion. Sunlight slipping through the ivy, birds chirping in the herb garden, and Pip whistling impatiently because Tilly had not yet brewed the morning tea. Tilly stretched, blinked at the soft light glittering through her curtain. Tilly stretched, blinked at the soft light filtering through her curtain, and murmured, all right, I'm up. Pip's whistle from the kitchen translated roughly to, You said that 10 minutes ago. Tilly patted across the wooden floor, her slippers making soft shuffling sound. She wrapped her robe around herself, tied it loosely, and stepped into the kitchen. Pip was already on the counter, lid tilted in a judgmental angle. Yes, Tilly said, waving a hand. Tea first, existential mystery second. Pip puffed a steam in agreement. As the kettle warmed, Tilly glanced towards the window. The garden lanterns glowed faintly in the morning light, their flames steady and calm, all of them including the one that had wandered last night. It hung in its usual place, looking perfectly ordinary. If Tilly hadn't seen it drift through the woods with her own eyes, she would have thought she'd imagined the whole thing. But the clasp in her pocket said otherwise. She pulled it out and set it on the table. The crescent moon shape gleamed faintly, even in daylight. "Now then," she murmured, leaning closely. "What are you?" The clasp was small, no bigger than a button, and made of a metal she didn't immediately recognize. Not silver, not iron, something older. Something that hummed faintly with magic. Pip whistled a curious note. "Yes," Tilly said. "I feel it too. It's enchanted, but not in a way I've seen before." She turned it over. The back was smooth, worn from use. No markings, no maker's stamp, no runes, but the magic inside it was unmistakable. Old, quiet, and recently disturbed. Tilly frowned thoughtfully. Someone took a spell fragment from a lantern and dropped this, which means they were in a hurry. Pip whistled again, this time a little sharper. "No, I don't think it was the thief," Tilly said. "More like someone who needed something they shouldn't have taken." She tapped the clasp lightly. "And I'd very much like to know who." Tilly had just finished her tea when a soft knock sounded at the door. Not a hurried knock, not a timid one. A polite, rhythmic knock that could only belong to one person. Tilly opened the door to find Elder Thistlewick standing on her doorstep, leaning slightly on his carved walking stick. His long white beard was braided neatly, and his spectacles perched precariously on the end of his nose. "Good morning, Tilly," he said, voice warm and gravely. "Elder Thistlewick," Tilly replied with a smile. "You're up early." The woods woke me." Tilly's smile faded. "Ah, you felt it too." The elder nodded, stepping inside. "Something stirred the forest magic last night. Something small but significant." Pip whistled a greeting from the counter. "Good morning to you as well, Pip," Thistlewick said, bowing slightly to the teapot. Pip puffed steam proudly. Tilly gestured toward the table. "I found this." Thistlewick leaned in, adjusting his spectacles. "A clasp dropped near the spell fragment," Tilly said. "A lantern lost part of its enchantment." Thistlewick's brows rose. "It hasn't happened in decades." "I know." The elder picked up the clasp carefully, turning it over in his wrinkled hand. "This metal, it's not from elderwood." "I thought the same." Thistlewick hummed thoughtfully. "There are only a few places where such metal is used. The Moonweaver's Forge, perhaps? Or the old workshops near Silverfen Marsh." Tilly tilted her head. "But those are days away." "Indeed," Thistlewick said, "which means whoever dropped this traveled far and quickly." Pip whistled a worried note. Yes, Tilly murmured, and they were in the Whispering Woods last night. Thistlewick set the clasp down gently. Be cautious, Tilly. Whoever took that spell fragment may not understand the consequences. Tilly nodded. I'll look into it. I knew you would, Thistlewick said with a small smile. The forest trusts you. He turned towards the door, pausing only once. If you find more clues, bring them to me. The council will want to know. Tilly nodded again. Of course. And with that, Elder Thistlewick stepped out into the morning light, leaving Tilly alone with Pip and the clasp. Pip whistled softly. Yes, Tilly said. We're going into the woods. The Whispering Woods looked different in daylight. Less mysterious. More alive. Sunlight filtered through the branches, casting dappled patterns on the forest floor. Birds flitted between the trees. Small creatures rustled in the underbrush. But the magic in the air still felt thin, like a blanket missing a corner. Tilly walked slowly, Pip tucked under her arm, the clasp in her pocket. She followed the path towards the clearing where she found the spell fragment. The moss still bore faint impressions of footsteps. Small, light, not human, not quite. Tilly crouched, brushing her fingers along the moss. These weren't made by a child. Pip whistled a questioning note. Not a forest creature either. Something in between. She stood and followed the trail deeper into the wood. The trees grew taller here, their branches arching overhead like a cathedral of leaves. The air grew colder, the light dimmer, and then she heard it, a faint sound, like a whisper, not words, not wind, something else. Tilly slowed her steps. Hello? The whisper stopped. Pip whistled nervous. It's all right, Tilly murmured. We're not here to cause trouble. She stepped into the small clearing of rose. Something shimmered near the base of an old oak tree. Not a spell fragment, not a creature. Something else entirely. A small satchel, made of dark woven fabric. Tilly approached cautiously. Now, what do we have here? She knelt and lifted the satchel. It was surprisingly heavy for its size. The clasp was broken, matching the crescent moon piece she found earlier. Well, Tilly murmured, that's convenient. Pip whistled excitedly. Yes, I know. Let's see what's inside. She opened the satchel carefully. Inside were a small vial of shimmering dust, a folded piece of parchment, and a tiny lantern no bigger than her palm. Tilly's breath caught. Oh. The tiny lantern glowed faint, its light flickering like a heartbeat. The lantern fragment, a piece of a larger enchantment. Pip whistled sharply. Yes, Tilly said softly. Someone is collecting lantern magic. She unfolded the parchment. A map, hand-drawn, rough, but unmistakable. It showed the Whispering Woods, and several lanterns circled in ink, including the one that had wandered last night. Tilly exhaled slowly. Someone is taking spell fragments on purpose. Pip whistled anxiously. I know, Tilly murmured, and they're not finished. As Tilly stood, the tiny lantern in the satchel flickered violently, then whispered, Help! Tilly froze. Pip whistled in alarm. The tiny lantern flickered again, its glow trembling. Taken. More. Tilly's heart tightened. More fragment? The lantern pulsed weakly. Danger. Tilly swallowed. What kind of danger? The lantern dimmed, then whispered one final word. Collector. Someone gathering spell fragments? Someone who knew how to break enchantment. Someone who had already taken more than one. Pip whistled a panicked note. Yes, Tilly said quietly. We need to move quickly. She slipped the satchel over her shoulder, tightened her cloak, and went deeper into the woods. Come on, Pip, we're not done yet. The forest seemed to hold its breath. The trees leaned in, the lanterns flickered faintly, and Tilly Butterbloom stepped forward, following the trail of the collector who had already taken too much. The deeper Tilly walked into the whispering wood, the more the air seemed to shift around her. Not in a frightening way. Nothing in these woods had ever meant to harm her, but in a way that suggested the forest was paying attention. Watching, listening, waiting. Pip nestled in the crook of her arm, humming a low, uneasy note. The satchel she'd found earlier swung gently at her side, the tiny lantern inside flickering faintly through the fabric. Easy now, Tilly murmured. We're not in trouble. We're just investigating. Pip whistled a skeptical trill. Yes, I know, but someone has to do it. The map she found in the satchel was crude but clear. Several lanterns were circled, some near the cottage, some deeper in the woods, and one far to the east, near Old Willowfen Crossing. That one was circled twice, boldly, urgent. Tilly tapped the map with her finger. Whoever drew this had a plan, and they're not finished. The tiny lantern inside the satchel flickered again, whispered faintly. Hurry! Tilly's brows lifted. Hurry? Why? The lantern dimmed, then brightened, as though struggling to form the next word. Collector. Pip whistled sharply. Yes, Tilly said softly. We heard that part, but why hurry? The lantern pulsed weakly. Takes more soon. Tilly exhaled slowly. So the collector is moving quickly. She folded the map and tucked it into her cloak. Then we'd better move quickly too. The woods grew denser as Tilly followed the faint trail. The trees here were older, massive trunks covered in moss, branches twisting high overhead like ancient arms. The air smelled of damp earth and wildflowers. But something was wrong. The forest lanterns along the path flickered weakly. Their glow dimmer than usual. Some barely held a flame at all. Tilly paused beneath one, reaching up to touch the metal frame. It was cold, too cold. Another fragment missing? She murmured. Pip whistled a worried note. Yes, I know, but look. She pointed to the ground beneath the lantern. The moss was disturbed again, and small footprints, the same size as the one she'd seen earlier. But this time, there were more of them, and they were fresher. Tilly crouched, brushing her fingers along the prints. Someone's passed through here not long ago. Pip leaned forward, whistling softly. Not a child, no, Tilly said. Too light, too quick, and the stride is strange. She stood, scanning the tree. The woods were quiet. Too quiet. No birdsong, no rustling leaves. Even the breeze seemed to hold his breath. Tilly tightened her grip on Pip. Something's watching him. Pip whistled a tiny, terrified squeak. Oh, hush, Tilly said gently. If it wanted to harm us, it would have done so already. She took a step forward, then another. The woods remained still, but the feeling of being watched didn't fade. Tilly reached a small clearing where the sunlight filtered through the branches in a soft golden beams. The air felt warmer here, calmer. But the moment she stepped into the clearing, she felt it. A presence, not threatening, but curious. Tilly stopped, her eyes scanning the trees. I know you're there. Silence. Pip whistled nervously. Tilly sighed. Honestly, if you're gonna follow someone, the polite thing to do is say hello. A soft rustle came from the branches above. Then a figure dropped lightly to the ground. Small, cloaked, barely reaching Tilly's shoulders. The hood was pulled low, hiding the face. The cloak was made of dark, woven fabric, the same material as the satchel. Tilly's eyes narrowed. Well, that answers one question. The figure froze, as though unsure whether to run or stay. Tilly lifted a hand, palm open. That's all right. I'm not here to hurt you. The figure didn't move. Pip whistled a warning. Tilly ignored him. You dropped your satchel. The figure flinched. Tilly continued, her voice calm. And you took a spell fragment from a lantern. I'd like to know why. The figure shifted slightly, the hood tilting downward. Then a soft voice, barely more than a whisper, escaped from beneath the hood. Needed. Tilly stepped closer. Needed what? The figure trembled. Light. Tilly softened her tone. You needed the light? Why? The figure hesitated, then lifted a small hand and pointed deeper into the woods. Tilly followed the gesture towards the east, toward Willowfen Crossing, toward the lantern circled twice on the map. Tilly's breath caught. Something's wrong there, isn't it? The figure nodded slowly. Dying. Pip whistled sharply. Tilly's heart tightened. A lantern is dying? The figure nodded again. Many. Tilly exhaled. Many lanterns. The figure's shoulder shook. Need light to fix. Tilly blinked. You're trying to repair them. The figure nodded vigorously. Collector takes too much. Tilly's eyes widened. You're not the collector. The figure shook their head violently. Stop, collector. Tilly stepped closer, her voice gentle. We're on the same side then. The figure hesitated, then slowly lowered their hood, revealing a small, delicate face with large, luminous eyes and pointed ears. A forest sprite, young, frightened, and trying desperately to save the lantern. Tilly's heart softened. Oh, sweetheart. The sprite blinked up at her, eyes shimmering with worry. Help? Tilly knelt, placing a hand gently on the sprite's shoulder. Of course I'll help. Pip whistled, a soft, relieved note. The sprite's eyes brightened. Hurry. Tilly nodded. Show me. The sprite led Tilly deeper into the woods, moving quickly but silently. Their small feet barely disturbed the moss. Pip clung to Tilly's arm, whistling anxiously every few steps. The forest grew darker as they walked. The trees leaned closer together, their branches forming a canopy that blocked out most of the sunlight. The air grew cooler, the ground softer. Tilly noticed more signs of disturbance. Lanterns dimming, moss torn up, faint traces of magic lingering in the air, and more small footprints, some belonging to the sprite, others not. Someone else has been here, Tilly murmured. The spirit nodded. Collector. Tilly frowned. Do you know who they are? The sprite shook their head. Cloak, mask, quiet. Tilly's brows lifted. A masked figure. The sprite nodded again. Takes light, leaves, dark. Pip whistled a horrified squeak. Yes, Tilly said softly. That's not good. They walked for several minutes, silent. Then the trees parted, and Tilly saw it. Willowfen Crossing, a small wooden bridge stretched over a narrow stream, surrounded by tall willow trees whose branches draped like curtains. Lanterns hung from the branches, their light usually bright and welcoming, but today they were dim, flickering, some barely glowing at all. Tilly's breath caught. Oh no. The sprite trembled beside her. Dying. Tilly stepped forward, her heart tightening. We need to help them. But before she could take another step, a shadow moved beneath the bridge. Quick, silent, watching. Tilly froze. Pip whistled sharply. The sprite grabbed Tilly's cloak, eyes wide with fear. Collector! Tilly narrowed her eyes. Well, she murmured, steams were not alone. The shadow beneath the bridge didn't move at first. It simply watched. Tilly could feel its attention like a cool breeze brushing the back of her neck. Not hostile, not welcoming, just present. The sprite clung to her cloak, trembling. Pip whistled a sharp warning trill that echoed faintly across the water. Tilly lifted a hand. Easy now. No need to panic. The shadow shifted, slowly and deliberately. A figure stepped out from beneath the bridge, their boots silent on the damp earth. They were taller than Tilly had expected, slender, cloaked in dark fabric that shimmered faintly with enchantment. Their face was hidden behind a smooth silver mask shaped like a crescent moon. Tilly's breath caught. The sprite whimpered. Pip whistled a terrified squeak. The masked figure tilted their head, studying Tilly with unnerving stillness. Tilly cleared her throat. Well, you're certainly not shy. The figure didn't respond. Tilly took a step forward. You've been taking spell fragments from the lanterns. The figure remained silent. The spirit tugged urgently on Tilly's sleeve. Danger! Tilly squeezed the sprite's hand gently. I know. She turned back to the masked figure. Why? What are you doing with them? The figure lifted a hand. Not threateningly, not aggressively, just lifting. And in their palm, a small orb of light flickered weakly. A spell fragment freshly taken. Tilly's heart tightened. You took another one? The figure closed their hands around the fragment, hiding it from view. Tilly stepped closer. You're hurting the lanterns. They're fading. The forest is dimming. The figure tilted their head again, as though considering her words. Then they spoke. Their voice was soft, distorted slightly by the mask. Not hurting. Tilly blinked. Not hurting. You're pulling pieces out of ancient enchantments. Saving. The sprite gasped, shaking their head violently. No, no, no. Tilly frowned. Saving what? The figure didn't answer. Instead, they turned and began walking across the bridge. Calm, silent, with purpose. Tilly's instincts screamed at her to follow, so she did. The wooden planks creaked softly beneath Tilly's boots as she crossed the bridge. The masked figure moved ahead of her, their cloak brushing the small ground like a whisper. The sprite clung to her side, trembling with every step. Pip whistled anxiously, his lid rattling faintly. Stay close, Tilly murmured. The figure stopped at the center of the bridge. The water below shimmered faintly, reflecting the dim lantern light. Willow branches swayed gently overhead, their leaves brushing the surface like fingertips. The figure lifted their hand again. This time, they opened the palm. A spell fragment hovered above it, glowing weakly. Broken, the whisper whispered. Tilly frowned. Broken? What's broken? The figure pointed towards the far end of the bridge. Tilly followed their gesture and saw it, a lantern, but not like the others. This one was enormous, twice the size of a normal forest lantern hanging from the thick willow branch. Its frame was cracked. Its glass was shattered. Its flame flickered weakly, barely clinging to life. Tilly's breath caught. Oh, the sprite whimpered. Dying. The masked figure nodded slowly. Or failing. Tilly stepped closer to the lantern. The air around it felt cold, unnaturally so. The magic inside was so unraveling, the thread of light drifting away like smoke. She turned back to the masked figure. You're taking fragments to repair this? The figure nodded once. Restore or... Tilly exhaled. Why didn't you say so? The figure tilted their head as though confused by the question. The sprite tugged at Tilly's coat. Danger! Wrong magic! Tilly knelt beside the sprite. What do you mean? The sprite pointed at the masked figure. Takes too much. Breaks others. Tilly looked back at the figure. You're draining the smaller lanterns to fix the big one. The figure didn't deny it. Necessarily. Tilly shook her head. No. It isn't. You're destabilizing the entire forest. The figure stiffened. Must save for. Tilly stood, her voice firm but gentle. Not like this. You're causing more harm than good. The figure took a step back, then another. Their hand tightened around the fragment. No choice. Tilly stepped forward. There's always a choice. The figure hesitated just for a moment. Then they turned and ran. Tilly didn't think. She ran. Pip whistled in alarm as she sprinted across the bridge, the sprite darting beside her with surprising speed. The masked figure moved like a shadow, swift, silent, weaving between the trees with unnatural grace. Stop, Tilly called. We can help you. The figure didn't slow. Branches whipped past Tilly's face as she chased them deeper into the woods. The ground grew uneven, roots twisting beneath her boots. The air grew colder, the light dimmer. The sprite leapt over the fallen log, shouting, Left! Left! Tilly veered left. The masked figure darted through the narrow gap between two ancient oaks. Tilly followed. The wood opened to a small clearing, and the figure was gone. Tilly skidded to a stop, breathing hard. Come on. Pip whistled a frustrated trill. The sprite collapsed into a patch of moss, panting. Fast! Too fast! Tilly scanned the clearing. No footprints, no rustling leaves, no lingering magic. The figure had vanished completely. Tilly sighed. Well, that's inconvenient. Pip whistled a tiny, exhausted squeak. Tilly knelt beside the sprite. Are you okay? The sprite nodded weakly. Tired. Tilly offered her hand. Come on, let's rest for a moment. The sprite curled up beside her, trembling slightly. Tilly stroked their hair gently. You did well. The sprite's luminous eyes lifted to hers. Collector. Dangerous. Tilly nodded. I know. Must stop. Tilly exhaled. We will, but we need to understand them first. The sprite hesitated, then whispered, Collector, not bad. Tilly blinked. Not bad. The sprite shook their head. Desperate. Tilly's heart softened. Desperate for what? The sprite pointed towards the direction the figure had fled. For dying. Forest. Dying. Tilly swallowed. The big lantern is the core. The sprite nodded. If core dies, forest dims forever. Tilly closed her eyes. Oh, that changed everything. Tilly sat quietly for a moment, letting the weight of the sprite's words settle. The core lantern wasn't just a big lantern. It was the heart of the Whispering Woods. Its magic kept the forest alive. Its light guided the spirit. Its warmth protected the creatures. If it failed, the entire forest would fade. Tilly opened her eyes. The collector is trying to save the core. The sprite nodded. But wrong way. Hurt others. Tilly stood slow. Then we need to find a better way. Pip whistled a hopeful note. Tilly smiled faintly. Yes, Pip, a better way. She looked towards the direction the collector had vanished. We need to find them again, and we need to talk, properly this time. The spirit tugged at her coat. Dangerous. Scared eyed. Tilly knelt beside them. Then we'll show them they don't have to be afraid. The sprite blinked up at her, eyes shimmering. Help? Tilly nodded. Of course. She stood, brushing the dirt from her cloak. Come on, we're going to get the core lantern. Pip whistled a determined trill. The sprite took Tilly's hand, and together they walked back towards Willow Fen Crossing, toward the dying lantern, toward the collector's trail, and toward a mystery that was far from solved. The walk back to Willow Fen Crossing felt heavier than before. Not because the woods were darker, though they were. Not because the lanterns were dimmer, though they flickered like tired breath. But because Tilly now understood the truth. The core lantern wasn't just failing, it was dying. And if it went out, Whispering Woods would lose more than light. It would lose magic, its memory, its voice. Tilly tightened her grip on the sprite's small hand. Pip nestled against her side, unusually quiet, his lid trembling, worried. Stay close, Tilly murmured. The sprite nodded, their luminous eyes darting nervously between the trees. Collectors near. I know, Tilly said softly, but we're not here to fight them. We're here to understand. The sprite shivered. Danger. Everything is dangerous when you don't understand it, Tilly replied gently, but that doesn't make it bad. Pip whistled a doubtful trill. Tilly sighed. Yes, I know. But someone has to be the sensible one. Willowfen Crossing came into view, its willow branches swaying like tired arms. The enormous core lantern still hung from the thickest branch, its frame cracked, its flame barely clinging to life. Tilly approached slowly. The air around the lantern felt colder than before, sharp, brittle, like winter frost creeping across the glass. The sprite whimpered. Weak. Tilly reached out, placing her hand gently against the lantern's frame. The metal was icy to the touch. Sweetheart, she whispered. You're holding on, aren't you? The lantern flickered weakly. Pip whistled a soft, mournful note. Tilly closed her eyes, letting her senses stretch into the magic. She felt the lantern's pulse thin, frayed, unraveling at the edges. The enchantment that was once bound, it was coming apart thread by thread. She opened her eyes. It's worse than I thought. The sprite nodded, tears shimmering in their eyes. Core, heart, forest, fading. Tilly swallowed. How long has it been like this? Weeks? Maybe more? And no one told the council? The sprite shook their head. Collector hides, takes, fixes, alone. Tilly frowned. Why alone? The sprite hesitated, then whispered, Afraid. Tilly's heart softened. Afraid of what? The sprite pointed towards the cracked lantern. Blame. Tilly exhaled slowly. Oh, the collector wasn't stealing magic for power. They were stealing it because they believed no one would help them. Because they feared being blamed for the core's failing. Because they were desperate. Tilly stepped back, studying the lantern more closely. The cracks weren't natural. They weren't caused by age or weather. They were caused by magic. A surge, a burst, a spell gone wrong. Tilly's eyes narrowed. This wasn't an accident. The sprite nodded. Collector tried, fixed, broke, more. Tilly's breath caught. They tried to repair it themselves. Yes, and made it worse. Yes. Tilly rubbed her temples. Oh dear. Pip whistled a sympathetic trill. Tilly sighed. We need to find them, not to scold them, but to help them. The sprite looked up at her, hoping flickering in their eyes. Help? Fix? Tilly nodded. Yes, but we need to understand what they did first. She knelt beside the lantern, examining the cracks. The magic inside pulsed weakly, like a heartbeat fading in and out. She reached into the cloak and pulled out the crescent moon clasp. The sprite gasped. Collectors! Tilly nodded. Yes, and I think it's more than just the clasp. She held it near the lantern. The metal hummed softly and faintly in resonance with the core. Tilly's eyes widened. This is part of the original enchantment. The sprite blinked. Old magic. Yes, Tilly murmured. Very old. Pip whistled a questioning note. Tilly nodded. I think the collector wasn't just repairing the lantern. They were trying to restore the original spell. The sprite's eyes widened. Dangerous. Very, Tilly said, especially if you don't know what you're doing. She stood, slipping the clasp back into her pocket. We need to find the collector before they try again. The spirit tugged her sleeve. They will, soon. Tilly frowned. How do you know? The sprite pointed towards the far side of the clearing. Tilly followed their gaze and saw it. A faint trail of shimmering dust. Spell dust. It was fresh, leading deeper into the wood. Tilly's breath caught. They're close. Pip whistled sharply. Tilly nodded. Come on, we're following the trail. The trail of spell dust wound through the trees like a thin ribbon of starlight. Tilly followed it carefully, the sprite darting ahead to point out the faintest glimmer. But the deeper they went, the stranger the woods became. The air grew colder, the light dimmer, the trees inward, their branches creaking softly, as though whispering warning. Pip whistled uneasily. I know, Tilly murmured. The forest is reacting. The spirit nodded. Or weak, forest scared. Tilly nodded. Forests don't get scared. The sprite shook their head. This one is alive. Tilly sighed. Of course it is. The trail led them to a narrow ravine where the ground dipped sharply. A fallen tree formed a natural bridge across the gap. The sprite hesitated. Danger. Tilly knelt beside them. What's wrong? Collector's near. Tilly stood low. Good. We need to talk to them. The sprite shook their head violently. No talk. They run. Hide. Scared. Tilly softened her voice. Then we'll show them we're not here to hurt them. She stepped onto the fallen tree. The wood creaked beneath her boots. Pip whistled nervously. Steady, Tilly murmured. She crossed the makeshift bridge and stepped onto the other side. The air shifted. The soft breeze brushed her cheek. And then a whisper. It wasn't from the sprite, and it wasn't from the land. It was from the forest itself. Help! Tilly froze. Pip whistled sharply. The sprite gasped. War is calling. Tilly whispered. The war is calling for help? The sprite nodded. Dying soon. Tilly's heart tightened. Then we're running out of time. She followed the trail deeper into the woods. The trail ended at a small hollow beneath the root of the enormous oak tree. The entrance was narrow, barely large enough for Tilly to crawl through. The sprite tugged her sleeve. Collector, inside. Tilly knelt, peering into the hollow. The faint glow flickered within. Soft, unsteady, bell fragments, dozens of them. Tilly's breath caught. Oh no. Pip whistled a horrified squeak. The sprite trembled. Too many taken. Tilly crawled inside. The hollow opened into a small chamber lit by the glow of the fragment. They floated into the air like tiny stars, each one pulsing weakly. And in the center of the chamber, the masked figure knelt on the ground. Their cloak was torn, their hands trembled, and in front of them lay a cracked lantern smaller than the cord, but clearly port. Tilly's heart softened. Oh, sweetheart. The figure flinched. Tilly raised her hands gently. It's all right. I'm not here to stop you. The figure shook their head violently. No, go away. Tilly crawled closer. I know what you're trying to do. The figure froze. Tilly continued softly. You're trying to fix the core, but you're hurting the others. The figure's shoulders shook. No choice. Tilly reached out, placing a hand gently on their arm. There's always a choice. The figure trembled, then slowly lifted their mask. Tilly gasped. The sprite gasped. Pip whistled in shock. The collector wasn't a thief, or a stranger, or a villain. They were a young forest guardian, barely older than the sprite. Eyes tired, face pale, magic flickering weakly beneath their skin. I broke it, they whispered. I tried to fix alone. Tilly's heart ached. Oh, sweetheart. The guardian's voice cracked. Please, help. Tilly took their hands gently. I will. The hollow beneath the oak roots felt warmer now that the guardian had revealed their face. Not physically warmer. The air was still cool and damp, but warmer in the way a room feels when fear begins to loosen its grip. The young guardian sat hunched over the cracked lantern, their hands trembling as they tried to steady their breathing. Their cloak cooled around them like a shadow, and the silver mask lay discarded on the ground beside them. Tilly sat cross-legged across from them, giving them space, but not distant. Pip perched on her knee, whistling softly. The sprite hovered near the lantern fragments, their luminous eyes wide with worry. Tilly spoke gently. "Tell me what happened." The guardian swallowed hard. Their voice was barely more than a whisper. "I tried to help." Tilly nodded. "I know. Start from the beginning." The guardian closed their eyes, gathering courage. When they spoke again, their words came hauntedly, like someone tried to untangle a knot that had grown too tight. Core lantern fading. Long time. Tilly leaned forward. "How long?" "Months, maybe more." The sprite gasped soft. "Why not tell council?" The guardian flinched. "They blame me." Tilly's brows knit. "Why would they blame you?" The guardian hesitated, then lifted their hand. A faint shimmer of magic flickered across their palm, unstable, crackling, like a candle flame in the storm. Tilly inhaled sharply. The spirit whispered, "Wild magic." The guardian nodded miserably. "Born with it. Hard to control. Breaks things." Tilly's heart softened. "And you think you broke the core lantern?" The guardian's voice cracked. "I did." They pointed to the cracked lantern in front of them, the smaller one they've been trying to repair. "Practiced on this first, but magic too strong." Tilly examined the lantern. The cracks were jagged, uneven, the kind caused by a sudden surge of uncontrolled magic. She looked back at the guardian. "You didn't mean to." "Doesn't matter," the guardian whispered. "Core dying because of me." Tilly shook her head. "No. The core was already weakening. You said it yourself. It had been fading for months." The guardian's eyes filled with tears. "I made it worse." Tilly reached out, placing a gentle hand on their arm. Trying to help is not the same as causing harm. The guardian trembled. "Council banish me if they know." Tilly's voice softened. "Sweetheart, no one is banishing anyone." The sprite nodded vigorously. "Tilly, help, always?" Pip whistled a firm, encouraging trill. The guardian looked up, hope flickering faintly in their eyes. "You help fix core?" Tilly smiled. "Yes, but we need to do it the right way." The guardian smiled. "I don't know right way." "That's all right," Tilly said. "I do." Tilly stood and brushed dirt from her cloak. "First, we need to understand the original enchantment." The guardian blinked. "Old. Very old." "Yes," Tilly said. Older than the village, older than the council, older than any of us. She reached into her pocket and pulled out the crescent moon clasp. The guardian gasped. My clasp? Tilly shook her head. Not just yours. This is part of the original spell. The guardian's eyes widened. How? Tilly knelt beside the cracked lantern. Look. She held the clasp near the lantern's frame. The metal hummed, softly, warmly, in resonance with the lantern's magic. The sprite whispered, Same magic. Tilly nodded. This clasp was once part of the core's enchantment. It's a key, a stabilizer. The guardian's breath hitched. I didn't know. Of course you didn't, Tilly said gently. No one has seen this in generations. Pip whistled a thoughtful note. Tilly continued. The core lantern wasn't just enchanted. It was woven. Threads of magic bound together with a physical anchor. These clasps were part of that anchor. The guardian whispered. So, if we find more clasps, we can stabilize the core, Tilly finished, without draining the smaller lanterns. The sprite's eyes brightened. Fix forest. Tilly nodded. Yes, but we need to find the rest of the clasps. The guardian hesitated. I found some. Tilly blinked. You did. The guardian reached into their cloak and pulled out a small bundle wrapped in cloth. They unfolded it carefully. Inside were 3 more clasps, each shaped differently. One like a star, one like a leaf, and one like a droplet. Tilly's breath caught. Oh my! The sprite whispered, ancient symbols. Tilly nodded. These represent the forest elements, light, growth, and water. Pip whistled excitedly. Tilly smiled. We're closer than I thought. The guardian looked up, hope trembling in their eyes. Can fix 4? Tilly placed a hand over theirs. Yes, but we need 1 more clasp. The guardian's face fell. Moon clasp missing. Tilly held up the crescent moon clasp she found. Not anymore. The guardian gasped. You found it. Tilly nodded. And now we have all 4. The sprite clasped her tiny hands. Fix, fix, fix. Tilly laughed. Not quite yet. We need to perform the restoration ritual. The guardian's eyes widened. I don't know ritual. Tilly smiled gently. I do. Before Tilly could explain further, the ground beneath them trembled. Just slightly. But enough to make Pip squeal and nearly topple off her knee. The sprite clung to Tilly's coat. Boris, scared. The guardian's eyes widened in panic. Core falling faster. Tilly stood quickly. We need to move, now. The guardians scrambled to their feet. Ritual. Where? At the core lantern, Tilly said. It is the heart of the enchantment. The sprite tugged her sleeve urgently. Hurry, hurry! Tilly grabbed the clasps, tucking them safely into her cloak. Come on. They crawled out of the hollow and stepped back into the forest. The air had changed. The light dimmed, and the lanterns flickered violently. The trees groaned softly, their branches trembling. Pip whistled a terrified shrill. Tilly tightened her grip on him. I know, I feel it too. The guardian pointed towards the Willowfen crossing. "Core calling." Tilly nodded. "Then let's answer." They ran. Branches whipped past them. Leaves rustled in frantic whispers. The ground trembled again, stronger this time. The sprite stumbled, and Tilly scooped them up out slowing. The guardian sprinted ahead, cloak billowing behind them like a shadow. As they neared the crossing, the air grew colder. The willow branches shook violently. The core lantern was barely glowing at all. Tilly's heart clenched. "Oh no," the guardian cried out. "Too late." Tilly shook her head. "No, not yet." She reached into the cloak and pulled out the clasps. They glowed faintly in her hand. The sprite whispered, "Ritual, now." Tilly nodded. "Guardian, stand with me." The guardian stepped beside her, trembling. Pip whistled a determined trill. Tilly took a breath. "Let's save the forest." The air around Willowfen Crossing felt charged, as though the forest itself was holding its breath. The willow branches trembled, their long tendrils brushing the ground like anxious fingers. The core's lantern flame flickered, weakly, barely more than a trembling ember. Tilly stood beneath it, the four ancient clasps glowing faintly in her hands. The guardian hovered beside her, their eyes wide with fear and hope, all tangled together. The sprite clung to Tilly's cloak, trembling. Pip whistled a low, steady note, trying to be brave. Tilly took a deep breath. "All right, let's begin." The guardian swallowed. "What do we do?" Tilly lifted the clasp. "We restore the threads of the original enchantment, one element at a time." The sprite whispered, "Light, growth, water, moon." Tilly nodded. "Exactly." She stepped closer to the core lantern. The air around it felt colder than ever, sharp, brittle, like the moment before ice cracks. The guardian flinched. "It's fading." Tilly placed a hand against the lantern's frame. "Not if we can help it." The lantern flickered weakly, as though trying to respond. Tilly lifted the first clasp of the star-shaped one. "Light," she murmured. The first thread. The clasp glowed brighter, resonating with the lantern's faint flame. A soft hum filled the air, vibrating through the willow branches. The sprite gasped. "Magic. Waking." Tilly smiled faintly. "Good." She pressed the clasp gently against the lantern's frame. The metal sank into place as though it had always belonged there. A thin thread of golden light spread from the clasp, weaving into the cracks. The lantern's flame brightened just a little. The guardian's breath hitched. "It's working." Tilly nodded. "One down." She lifted the second clasp, the leaf-shaped one. "Growth," she said softly. The second thread. The clasp glowed green, warm and vibrant. The willow branches above them rustled, as though recognizing the magic. Tilly pressed the clasp into place. Another thread of light spread across the lantern's surface, weaving into the first. The flame brightened again. Pip whistled an excited trill. Tilly lifted the third clasp to the droplet. "Water," she murmured. The third thread. The clasp shimmered blue, cool, and soothing. The stream beneath the bridge rippled, responding to the magic. Tilly pressed the clasp into place. A third thread of light joined the others, forming a delicate lattice across the lantern's crack. The flame grew stronger. The guardian whispered, "One more." Tilly nodded. The moon clasp. She lifted the crescent moon clasp, the one she found near the first spell fragment. It glowed silver, soft, and steady. Tilly stepped closer to the lantern, but the moment she raised the clasp, the ground trembled. The willow branches whipped violently. The lantern flickered wildly, its flames sputtering. The sprite called out, "Core, scared!" The guardian stumbled. "It's resisting." Tilly steadied herself. "It's not resisting, it's warning us." Pip whistled a frantic note. Tilly closed her eyes, letting her senses stretch into the magic. She felt it. A pulse. A heartbeat. A memory. The core wasn't just failing. It was holding something back. Something old and powerful. Something dangerous. Tilly opened her eyes. "There's more to this enchantment than we thought." The guardian trembled. "What do we do?" Tilly lifted the moon clasp. "We finish what we started." The sprite clung to her cloak. "Tilly, careful." Tilly smiled gently. "Always." She pressed the moon clasp against the lantern. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, everything happened at once. Light exploded from the lantern, not harsh, not blinding, but warm and enveloping, like stepping into a memory made of sunlight. Tilly grasped at the world around her. Tilly gasped as the world around her dissolved. The willow trees faded, the stream vanished, and the forest melted into the light. And then, she stood in a clearing she had never seen before. The air shimmered with magic. Lanterns hung from every branch, glowing brightly. Forest guardians moved gracefully between the trees, weaving threads of light into the air. And at the center of the clearing, a tall figure stood before the four lanterns. Their cloak shimmered with the starlight. Their hands glowed with ancient magic. Tilly whispered, "Who?" The sprite appeared beside her, eyes wide. "Old guardian." The guardian gasped, "First guardian." The tall figure lifted their hands, weaving the four clasps into the lantern's frame. Threads of magic spiraled outward, binding the forest together. The enchantment was beautiful. It was powerful, perfect. But then, a crack, a surge, a burst of uncontrolled magic. The tall figure stumbled. The lantern flickered violently. The threads unraveled. The forest dimmed. Tilly's breath caught. The sprite whispered, "Enchantment unstable." The guardian trembled. "Always unstable." Tilly understood that the original enchantment had been flawed, not because of the guardian or the forest, but because the magic was too powerful for one person to control. The tall figure collapsed to their knees, exhausted. The lantern dimmed, and the memory faded, and the world returned. Tilly stumbled back, gasping. The willow branches swayed violently. The core lantern flickered, its flame trembling. The guardian clutched their chest. "I saw everything." The sprite nodded, tears in their eyes. "Old magic, too strong. Tilly steadied herself. The original enchantment wasn't meant to last forever. The guardian whispered, "I didn't break it?" Tilly shook her head. "No, you didn't. It was already failing." The guardian collapsed to their knees, sobbing. "I tried to fix alone." Tilly knelt beside them, placing a gentle hand on their shoulder. "You were never meant to do it alone." The sprite hugged the guardian tightly. "Not alone now." Pip whistled a soft, comforting note. Tilly stood and faced the core lantern. "We need to finish this ritual. Together." The guardian wiped their eyes. "Together." The sprite nodded. "Together." Tilly lifted the moon clasp again. This time the lantern didn't resist. It welcomed the magic. Tilly pressed the clasp into place. The threads of light wove together. Silver, gold, green, blue. They spiraled around the lantern, sealing the cracks, restoring the flame. And the lantern glowed brighter, until the entire clearing was bathed in a warm, radiant light. The willow branches stilled. The ground stopped trembling. The forest exhaled, and the core lantern burned steady and strong. The sprite cheered, spinning in circles. "Fixed! Fixed! Fixed!" The guardian stared in awe. "We did it." Pip whistled triumphantly. Tilly smiled, her heart swelling with relief. "Yes, we did." The forest lanterns along the path brightened, their flames steady and warm. The air felt lighter, the trees stood taller. The magic hummed through the forest like a song returning to life. The guardian looked up at Tilly, tears shimmering in their eyes. "Thank you." Tilly cupped their cheek gently. "You were never the problem. You were part of the solution." The sprite nodded vigorously. "Guardian. Good. Brave." The guardian smiled weakly. "Still scared." Tilly laughed softly. "Good. Fear keeps us careful, but courage keeps us moving." Guardian took a deep breath. "What now?" Tilly looked towards the heart of the forest. "Now," she said, "we tell the council the truth." The guardian paused. "They banish me?" Tilly shook her head. "Not if I'm with you." The sprite puffed out their tiny chest. "Me too." Pip whistled a determined trill. Tilly smiled. "See, you're not alone anymore." The guardian's eyes filled with tears again, but this time they were tears of relief. "Thank you, Tilly." Tilly squeezed their hand. "Come on, let's go home." The forest felt different now. Not fully healed. The magic still trembled faintly in the air, but steadier, calmer, like a fever had broken, leaving behind a lingering ache, but also relief. The core lantern glowed brightly behind them, its restored flame casting warm light across the willow fen crossing. The willow branches swayed gently, no longer thrashing in panic. The stream bubbled softly beneath the bridge, reflecting the lantern's renewed glow. Tilly stood at the edge of the clearing, the guardian and the sprite beside her, Pip tucked securely under her arm. She took a deep breath. "Well," she murmured, "that was the easy part." The guardian blinked. "Easy?" Tilly smiled. Compared to telling the council, absolutely. The sprite whimpered. Council, scary. Pip whistled a sympathetic note. Tilly patted the sprite's head. They're not scary. They're just dramatic. The guardian swallowed hard. Banish me? Tilly shook her head. Not if I explain what happened, and not if they see the forest healing. The guardian looked unconvinced. Tilly softened her voice. Sweetheart, the council isn't cruel. They're cautious, and they've been worried about the forest for weeks. They'll be relieved to know the truth. The sprite tugged Tilly's sleeve. Go now? Tilly nodded. Yes, before the core lantern dims again. She turned towards the path leading out of Willowfen Crossing. The forest lanterns along the trail glowed brighter now, their flames steady and warm. The air hummed with renewed magic. The guardian hesitated. I'm scared. Tilly offered her hand. Then hold on to me. The guardian took her hand, trembling. Good, Tilly said gently. Let's go. The journey back to Elderwood Village was quieter than Tilly expected. Not silent, the forest was never silent, but peaceful. The lanterns glowed steadily. The trees rustled softly. Small creatures peeked from behind the roots and branches, watching curiously as Tilly and her companions passed. The sprite darted ahead, then back again, too excited to stay still. Forest happy, Tilly smiled. Doesn't it feel lighter? Pip whistled a cheerful trill. The guardian walked beside Tilly, their steps slow and uncertain. Council angry? Tilly shook her head. They'll be surprised, maybe confused, but not angry. The guardian walked beside Tilly, their steps slow and uncertain. Council angry? Tilly shook her head. They'll be surprised, maybe confused, but not angry. I broke lantern. You tried to fix it, Tilly corrected gently. And you didn't break it alone. The enchantment was already failing. The guardian looked down. Still my fault. Tilly stopped walking. The guardian froze. Tilly knelt in front of them, lifting their chin gently. Listen to me. You didn't cause the forest to fade. You didn't break the core. You didn't harm the lantern out of greed or malice. The guardian's eyes shimmered with tears. You acted out of fear, Tilly said softly, and love, and desperation. Those aren't crimes. The guardian swallowed hard. But council, Tilly smiled. Let me worry about the council. The sprite nodded vigorously. Tilly strong. Pip whistled proudly. The guardian managed a small trembling smile. Tilly stood and brushed off her cloak. Come on, we're almost there. Elderwood Village sat nestled at the edge of the Whispering Wood. Its cottages built from stone and timber, their roofs covered with moss and ivy. Lanterns hung from every doorway, glowing warmly, even in the daylight. As Tilly stepped into the village square, several villagers paused to greet her. Morning, Tilly. Lovely day, isn't it? Pip looked lovely as ever. Pip puffed steam proudly. But as the villagers noticed the guardian and the sprite beside her, their smiles faltered. Whispers spread quickly. Is that a forest sprite? Who's the cloaked one? Why does Tilly look so serious? Tilly lifted a hand. All will be explained soon. The villagers exchanged uneasy glances. Tilly continued towards the council hall, a tall circular building with carved wooden doors and lanterns lining the entrance. The guardians slowed, scared. Tilly squeezed their hand. I'm right here. The sprite clung to her cloak. Me too. Pip whistled a steady, reassuring note. Tilly pushed the doors open. The council hall was dimly lit, its walls lined with ancient lanterns that glowed with soft, steady light. A long wooden table sat in the center, surrounded by a high-backed chairs covered with forest motifs. Elder Thistlewick stood at the head of the table, his beard braided neatly, his spectacles perched on the end of his nose. Tilly, he said warmly, we've been expecting you. Tilly blinked. You have? Thistlewick nodded. The forest sent word. Pip whistled in surprise. The sprite gasped. The forest speaks? Thistlewick smiled, in its own way. The other council members murmured among themselves as Tilly approached. Elder Marigold, her crown of dried flowers, leaned forward. Tilly Butterbloom, why does the forest hum with new magic? Elder Rowan, tall and stern, narrowed his eyes. And who is this young guardian with you? The young guardian flinched. Tilly stepped forward. I'll explain everything. Thistlewick gestured to the table. Please. Tilly took a deep breath. The core lantern was failing. Gasps rippled through the council. Elder Rowan stood abruptly. Impossible. The core had stood for centuries. Tilly shook her head. It was fading, cracking, unraveling. Elder Marigold pressed a hand to her chest. Why were we not told? Tilly glanced at the guardian. The guardian trembled. Tilly spoke gently. Because somebody was afraid. The council turned to the guardian. The guardian lowered their head. I broke lantern. Elder Rowan's eyes widened. You what? Tilly stepped between them. They didn't break it, not alone. The enchantment was already unstable. Thistlewick nodded slowly. I suspected as much. Tilly continued. The guardian tried to repair it, but their magic is wild, untrained. They made it worse. The guardian flinched. Tilly placed a hand on their shoulder, but they were trying to help. Elder Marigold's expression softened. Oh, sweetheart. Elder Rowan frowned. Why not come to us? The guardian whispered. Scared. Council will banish me. Thistlewick sighed. We would never banish a guardian for trying to save the forest. The guardian looked up, tears shimmering. Sorry. Tilly squeezed their hand. They're not the villain here. Elder Rowan crossed his arms. Then who is? Tilly reached into her cloak and pulled out the plaque. These, the council gasped. Thistlewick stepped forward, eyes wide. Ancient anchor. Tilly nodded. The original enchantment was flawed. It was too powerful for one guardian to maintain. It was always going to fail. Elder Marigold whispered. And the clasps? They were part of the original spell, Tilly said. The guardian found them, and I used them to restore the core. The council murmured in awe. Thistlewick smiled warmly. You saved the forest. Tilly shook her head. We saved it together. She gestured to the guardian and the sprite. The sprite puffed out their tiny chests proud. I helped blacks. Pip whistled triumphantly. The guardian whispered, Thank you, council. Elder Rowan stepped forward, kneeling before the guardian. You are brave, and you are forgiven. The guardian burst into tears. Tilly knelt beside them, wrapping an arm around their shoulders. See? No banishment. The sprite hugged the guardian tightly. Safe. Thistlewick cleared his throat. There is one more matter. Tilly looked up. Yes? Thistlewick smiled. The forest needs a new guardian. The guardian froze. Elder Marigold nodded. One who understands its magic. Elder Rowan added, One who has already proven their heart. The guardian's eyes widened. Me? Tilly smiled. Of course you. The guardian trembled. I accept. The council bowed their heads. Welcome, guardian of the Whispering Woods. The walk back to Butterbloom Cottage felt lighter than Tilly had taken in days. The forest lanterns glowed brightly. The trees rustled with warmth. The air hummed with renewed magic. The sprite danced ahead, singing a little tune. The guardian walked beside Tilly, their steps steady and proud. Pip whistled happily. Tilly smiled. Well, that was quite a day. The guardian nodded. Thank you, Tilly. Tilly squeezed their hand. Anytime. They reached the cottage. The lanterns along the path flickered warmly, welcoming them home. Tilly opened the door. Warmth spilled out. The fire cracked softly. The herbs swayed gently. Everything felt right. The guardian stepped inside, eyes wide with wonder. Cozy. Tilly laughed. It's home. Pip whistled proudly. The sprite curled up on the cushion. Sleepy. Tilly hung her cloak and stretched. We all are. The guardian hesitated. Stay? Tilly smiled warmly. As long as you like. The forest hummed outside. The lanterns glowed. And inside Butterbloom Cottage, surrounded by warmth and magic, and a newfound family, Tilly Butterbloom finally rested. Morning light spilled softly across Butterbloom Cottage, warming the ivy-covered stones and filling the windows with a golden glow. The forest beyond the garden shimmered with renewed magic, its lanterns glowing brighter than they had in months. Inside, Tilly Butterbloom stirred awake to the sound of Pip whistling a cheerful morning tune. She blinked sleepily. All right, I'm up. Pip puffed steam triumphantly. The guardian was curled up in a small daybed near the hearth, wrapped in a blanket. Tilly had insisted they use it. The sprite slipped on a cushion beside them, tiny hands tucked under their chin. Both looked peaceful, exhausted but peaceful. Tilly smiled softly. You two earned that rest. She slipped out of bed, wrapped her robe around herself, and padded into the kitchen. The morning felt different. Lighter, warmer, as though the forest itself was humming a quiet song of gratitude. Pip hopped into the counter, whistling impatiently. "Yes," Tilly said. "Tea first." She brewed the morning pot, and she glanced out the window. The lanterns along the garden path glowed steadily. No flickering, no trembling, no wandering. Just a warm, steady light. Tilly exhaled. Good. The guardian woke slowly, blinking at the soft morning light. Their hair was messy, their cloak folded neatly beside them. They sat up, rubbing their eyes. "Morning," Tilly smiled. "Good morning, sweetheart." The guardian looked around, as though unsure whether last night had been a dream. "Is the forest still bright?" Tilly nodded. "Very." The sprite yawned loudly, stretching their tiny arms. "Hungry?" Tilly whistled a sympathetic note. Tilly laughed. "Breakfast it is." She set out a simple meal. Warm bread, honey, berries, and a pot of tea. The guardian ate quietly, still overwhelmed. The sprite devoured their portion with enthusiastic squeaks. After breakfast, Tilly stepped outside to check the lantern. The guardian followed. The sprite perched on Tilly's shoulder. The forest greeted them with soft rustling leaves and warm sunlight filtering through the branches. The guardian whispered, "Beautiful." Tilly nodded. It always was. It just needed a little help. The guardian hesitated. Scared still." Tilly turned to them. "Of what?" "Being guardian. Big job." Tilly smiled gently. "It is, but you won't be doing it alone." The sprite nodded vigorously. "We will help. Always." Pip whistled a proud trill. Tilly placed a hand on the guardian's shoulder. "And I am here. Whenever you need me." The guardian's eyes shimmered. "Thank you, Tilly." Tilly squeezed their shoulder. "Come on now, let's see how the forest is feeling." They walked along the garden path and into the whispering wood. The lanterns glowed brightly, their flames steady and warm. The trees swayed gently. The sprite darted ahead, giggling. "Forest is happy." The guardian touched a nearby lantern. It glowed brighter beneath their hand. Tilly smiled. "It recognizes you." The guardian blinked. "Me?" "You're its guardian now," Tilly said. "It knows your magic." The guardian swallowed. "I don't deserve." Tilly shook her head. "You do. You cared enough to try. And even when you were scared. And that's what makes a good guardian." The guardian looked down, tears forming. "I won't fail again." Tilly lifted their chin gently. "You didn't fail, you learned. That's different." The guardian nodded slowly. They continued deeper into the woods. The forest lanterns brightened as they passed. The trees leaned closer. The air hummed with magic. Tilly felt it too, a warmth spreading through her chest, a sense of rightness settling back into the world. The forest was healing, truly healing. As they reached a small clearing, Elder Thistlewick stepped out from behind a tree, leaning on his carved walking stick. "Good morning, Tilly," he said warmly, "and good morning to our new guardian." The guardian stiffened. "Elder?" Thistlewick smiled kindly. No need to be nervous. I came to see how the forest fared. Tilly gestured around them. See for yourself. Thistlewick closed his eyes, letting his senses stretch into the magic. After a moment, he nodded. Stronger, much stronger. The sprite puffed out their chest proudly. We fixed. Thistlewick chuckled. Indeed you did. He turned to the guardian. You have a difficult road ahead, but you won't walk it alone. The guardian swallowed. Thank you, Elder. Thistlewick placed a gentle hand on their shoulder. You are young, but you are brave, and you have good guidance. He looked at Tilly. Tilly raised an eyebrow. Oh, don't look at me like that. I'm not joining the council. Thistlewick laughed. No one asked you to. Tilly smirked. Yet. The sprite giggled. Pip whistled smugly. Thistlewick bowed his head. The forest is grateful, and so am I. He turned to leave, and then paused. Tilly. Yes. Try not to solve every ancient mystery by yourself. Tilly grinned. No promises. Thistlewick chuckled and disappeared into the tree. As they continued walking, the guardian stopped suddenly. Tilly followed their gaze. A lantern, one of the smaller forest lanterns, drifted gently towards them, not flickering or trembling, just floating with a purpose. It hovered in front of the guardian, then whispered, Thank you. The guardian gasped. The sprite clasped their hands. Lantern likes you. Tilly smiled softly. It's a blessing, a welcome. The lantern drifted closer, touching the guardian's hand with a warm glow. Then it floated upward, settling back into its place among the branches. The guardian wiped their eyes. Forest, trust me. Tilly nodded. It does. The guardian took a deep breath. I will protect it. Tilly squeezed their hand. I know you will. By the time they returned to Butterbloom Cottage, the sun was high in the sky, and the garden glowed with soft light. The herbs swayed gently, and the lanterns flickered warmly. Tilly opened the door, and warmth spilled out. The cottage felt peaceful, safe, and whole. The sprite darted inside, curling up on their favorite cushion. Pip hopped into the counter, whistling for tea. Tilly laughed. Yes, it's tea time. The guardian hesitated in the doorway. Tilly. Tilly turned around. Yes. Can I stay sometimes? Tilly smiled warmly. You can stay whenever you like. The guardian's eyes filled with relief. Thank you. Tilly stepped inside, gesturing them to follow. Come on, we've earned a quiet afternoon. The guardian entered the cottage, and the door closed softly behind them. The forest hummed outside. The lanterns glowed, and inside Butterbloom Cottage, surrounded by warmth, magic, and a newfound family, Tilly Butterbloom finally rested. Calm, safe, at home. Rest well now, dear friend, and I'll be right here when you wander back again.